Nathan Parker had never thought he'd find someone like Emily Hart. She was radiant in her simplicity, kind, intelligent, and with a quiet strength that drew him in from the moment they met. At just 19, Emily had a natural innocence about her, but she also carried herself with a maturity that belied her age. For Nathan, who was 24, she felt like a breath of fresh air, someone he could see a real future with. After 3 months of dating, Nathan felt it was time to take the next step, introducing Emily to his parents. His mother, Linda, had always been warm and supportive, and Nathan was certain she'd adore Emily. His father, Robert, was more of a wild card, sometimes friendly, sometimes overly critical, but Nathan hoped for the best. The evening started off well enough. Linda welcomed Emily with open arms, complimenting her dress and chatting with her about her studies. But Robert was another story. He was distant, his eyes cold as they scanned Emily from head to toe. He barely said a word to her, and when he did, it came out curt and dismissive. Nathan felt the tension in the air but brushed it off, convincing himself that Robert was simply having a bad day. After Emily left, though, everything exploded. As soon as the door closed behind her, Robert turned to Nathan, his face red with anger. "That girl is not suitable for you," he snapped. "She's not who you think she is." Nathan was taken aback. "What are you talking about? Emily is amazing. Mom liked her and I—" "Your mother doesn't know what I know," Robert interrupted, his voice rising. He spat out a string of obscenities that made Nathan's stomach churn. "Stop!" Nathan shouted, his fists clenching. "You don't know her. You don't get to talk about her like that." But Robert didn't back down. "I do know her," he said coldly. "More than you think." The argument escalated into a full-blown shouting match. Nathan defended Emily with everything he had, but Robert wouldn't relent. Eventually, Linda stepped in, diffusing the tension and sending them both to opposite corners of the house. That night, Nathan lay awake in bed, his mind racing. Why had his father reacted so strongly to Emily? What did he mean by knowing her? The thought gnawed at him, but he decided not to let it ruin what he had with her. His father had always been difficult. Maybe this was just another one of his inexplicable moods. But the truth, as Nathan would soon discover, was far more complicated. The following day, Nathan returned to his parents' house, hoping to smooth things over. His mother wasn't home, and he found Robert sitting alone in the living room, nursing a glass of whiskey. "We need to talk," Nathan said, his voice firm. Robert glanced at him, his expression unreadable. "I told you everything I needed to say last night." "No, you didn't," Nathan shot back. "You accused Emily of things that make no sense. I want to know why." For a moment, Robert said nothing. Then he sighed, setting his glass down on the coffee table. "Fine," he said. "You want the truth? I'll give it to you." Nathan crossed his arms, bracing himself. "About a year ago," Robert began, "I was at the sauna with some friends. It was late and we were having a few drinks. A group of girls showed up, young, loud, dressed like they didn't belong there. Your girlfriend was one of them." Nathan felt his stomach drop, but he didn't interrupt. "She was with this crowd," Robert continued, his lip curling in disgust. "Drinking, laughing, getting handsy with guys. I don't know how far it went, but it was clear what kind of girl she was. And now you're telling me she's some innocent angel? Open your eyes, Nathan." Nathan stared at his father, his mind reeling. Emily? At a sauna? A year ago? It didn't make sense. She had told him she'd never even been in a serious relationship before him, that he was her first in every way. The girl Robert described didn't sound like Emily at all. "You're lying," Nathan said, his voice shaking. "Or you're mistaken. Emily would never—" "I know what I saw," Robert snapped. "And I'm telling you this because I don't want you to make a mistake. She's not who you think she is." Nathan stormed out of the house, his heart pounding. He didn't know what to believe. Was his father lying to sabotage his relationship, or had Emily kept something from him? He needed answers, and there was only one person who could give them to him. That evening, Nathan invited Emily over to his apartment. He tried to act normal as they cooked dinner together, but his tension was impossible to hide. Finally, as they sat down to eat, he couldn't hold it in any longer. Emily, he began, his voice hesitant, I need to ask you something. And I need you to be honest with me. She looked up, her brow furrowing in concern. Of course. What's wrong? Nathan took a deep breath. Were you ever at a sauna? About a year ago? With some friends? Emily's face went pale. A sauna? She repeated. What are you talking about? My dad said he saw you there, Nathan said, his voice growing steadier. With some guys. He claims you were doing things? Emily's eyes widened in shock. Nathan, no. I've never. She stopped, her hands trembling. Wait, was this in Westwood? Yes, Nathan said, surprised. Why? Emily covered her mouth with her hand, her eyes filling with tears. Oh my God, she whispered. I wasn't there. I think I know who he saw. What do you mean? Nathan asked, confused. Emily took a deep breath, wiping her tears. I have an older cousin, Kara. We look a lot alike. People have mistaken us for sisters our whole lives. A year ago, she was living in Westwood. She used to party a lot, and she's not exactly known for making good decisions. Nathan stared at her, his mind racing. You're saying my dad mistook Kara for you? Emily nodded. It's the only explanation. I've never been to a sauna like that, Nathan. I swear. And I've never even met your dad before last night, so how could he possibly know me? Nathan felt a wave of relief, but it was quickly replaced by anger at his father for jumping to conclusions, for dragging Emily's name through the mud based on a mistaken identity. I believe you, he said firmly, reaching for her hand. But I'm not letting this go. The next day, Nathan returned to his parents' house, determined to confront his father once and for all. Linda was in the kitchen, but Nathan went straight to the living room, where Robert was reading the newspaper. We need to talk, Nathan said, his tone sharp. Robert looked up, frowning. About what? Emily, Nathan said. And the fact that you're wrong about her? Robert sighed, setting the paper down. Nathan, I already told you. No, you didn't, Nathan interrupted. You saw someone who looked like her, but it wasn't her. It was her cousin, Kara. They look alike, but they're not the same person. Robert's expression faltered for a moment, but he quickly regained his composure. How do you know she's not lying to you? Because I trust her, Nathan said. And because she had no idea about any of this until I told her. She's not who you think she is, Dad. And you owe her an apology. Robert didn't respond right away. For a moment, Nathan thought he might argue, but instead, he simply nodded. Fine, he said. If I was wrong, I'll apologize. But don't say I didn't warn you, Nathan. People aren't always what they seem. True to his word, Robert apologized to Emily the next time they saw each other. It wasn't the warmest apology, he still seemed skeptical, but Emily accepted it graciously, determined not to let his initial judgment affect her relationship with Nathan. Over time, Robert began to see Emily for who she truly was. Her kindness, intelligence, and loyalty became impossible to ignore, and eventually his attitude toward her softened. For Nathan, the experience had been a test, not just of his relationship with Emily, but of his own ability to stand up for what he believed in. He had chosen to trust Emily, and in doing so, he had solidified their bond in a way that no misunderstanding could break. As they walked hand in hand through the park one sunny afternoon, Nathan turned to Emily with a smile. I'm sorry you had to go through all of that, he said. But I'm glad we made it through together. Emily squeezed his hand, her eyes shining with gratitude. Me too, she said. And I promise, no more surprises. Nathan laughed, pulling her closer. Whatever challenges lay ahead, he knew they could face them, together. Though Nathan had cleared up the misunderstanding with his father and Emily's innocence was proven, a shadow of doubt continued to loom over their relationship. Nathan couldn't help but wonder why his father had been so adamant in the first place. Robert's apology had been half-hearted, and his cryptic warning, "People aren't always what they seem," echoed in Nathan's mind long after their conversation. Nathan tried to push these thoughts aside. He trusted Emily. He believed her. And yet, the seed of doubt planted by Robert's accusations refused to stop growing. Was it possible that Emily wasn't telling him everything? What if there was more to her cousin Kara's story than she had admitted? One evening, as Nathan scrolled through social media, his curiosity got the better of him. He searched for Kara Hart's profile. It didn't take long to find her. Her profile was public, and her photos revealed a young woman who did, indeed, look strikingly similar to Emily. Nathan felt a chill run down his spine as he scrolled through images of Kara partying, often surrounded by older men in expensive suits, her bright smile masking a sense of recklessness. He clicked on a group photo from a year ago. Kara was front and center, standing outside what appeared to be a high-end sauna. Nathan's breath caught in his throat. Among the faces in the background, he spotted a familiar one, his father. Robert was there, standing slightly apart from the group but unmistakably present. Nathan stared at the photo, his heart pounding. Why had his father been at that sauna? And why had he failed to mention this detail when recounting his version of events? Was there something else he was hiding? The next morning, Nathan confronted his father. He didn't bother with pleasantries, slamming the printed photo down on the kitchen table where Robert was eating breakfast. Care to explain this? Nathan demanded, his voice laced with anger. Robert's face paled as he glanced at the photo. He looked up at Nathan, his jaw tightening. "Where did you get this?" he asked. "Does it matter?" Nathan shot back. "You were there today. You were at that sauna. You didn't just see Emily, or Kara, for that matter, from a distance. You were part of it. So why didn't you tell me?" Robert pushed his chair back, standing slowly. "You need to drop this, Nathan," he said, his tone firm. "Not until I get the truth," Nathan insisted. "You lied to me. You made Emily out to be something she's not, and now I'm starting to think it's because you're trying to cover your own ass. So what really happened that night?" Robert stared at Nathan for a long moment before finally speaking. "Fine. You want the truth? I'll tell you the truth." He took a deep breath, his shoulders sagging. "I was at that sauna because one of my friends invited me. I wasn't proud of it then, and I'm not proud of it now. And yes, Kara was there. She was involved in things I shouldn't have seen. I didn't know who she was at the time, but when I saw Emily, I assumed she was the same type of girl. That's why I reacted the way I did." Nathan felt a wave of disgust and disbelief. "So you judged Emily because you were too much of a coward to admit your own mistakes?" he said, his voice shaking. "You threw her under the bus to save yourself?" Robert's face darkened. "I was trying to protect you," he snapped. "I didn't want you getting involved with someone who might drag you into a mess." "No," Nathan said, his voice cold. "You were trying to distract from your own mess. And you nearly ruined my relationship in the process." With that, Nathan turned and walked out of the house, leaving his father standing in silence. After confronting his father, Nathan decided it was time to tell Emily everything. He invited her over that evening, determined to be completely honest with her. As they sat on the couch, Nathan handed her the photo of Kara and Robert. Emily's eyes widened as she took it in. "That's Kara," she said softly. "And is that your dad?" Nathan nodded, running a hand through his hair. "He lied to me, Emily. He made it seem like he just happened to see you, or Kara, at the sauna. But he was there. He was part of it. And he didn't want me to know." Emily's face fell, and she placed the photo on the coffee table. "I don't understand. Why would he lie about this? What was he trying to hide?" "I don't know," Nathan admitted. "But I do know one thing. This has nothing to do with you. You didn't do anything wrong, Emily. And I'll never let him or anyone else make you feel otherwise." Emily gave him a small, grateful smile, but Nathan could see the unease in her eyes. "Nathan," she said hesitantly, "there's something I need to tell you." His heart sank. "What is it?" "It's about Kara," Emily said. "She and I used to be close when we were kids, but we grew apart as we got older. She started getting into trouble, partying, dating older men, that sort of thing. My family tried to help her, but she pushed us away. I thought she was getting better, but maybe I was wrong." Nathan reached for her hand. "Emily, whatever Kara's done, it doesn't change how I feel about you. You're not her. You're not responsible for her choices." Emily nodded, but Nathan could tell the revelation had shaken her. Kara's actions had inadvertently dragged Emily into a web of lies and deceit, and now they were both paying the price. Determined to get to the bottom of the situation, Nathan decided to confront Kara directly. With Emily's help, he tracked her down at a cafe where she often hung out. When Nathan approached her, Kara looked up with a mix of curiosity and suspicion. "You must be Emily's boyfriend," she said, smirking. "What can I do for you?" Nathan didn't mince words. "I need to know what happened at the sauna last year. The truth." Kara raised an eyebrow, leaning back in her chair. "But is Daddy Dearest still running his mouth?" Nathan's jaw tightened. "You know my father?" Kara laughed bitterly. "Oh, I know him. He and his friends liked to act like they were better than everyone else, but they weren't exactly saints themselves. Let's just say they had a good time that night, and they didn't seem to care who saw them." Nathan felt a chill run down his spine. "What do you mean?" Kara's smirk faded, and for the first time, she looked serious. "Your dad was the one who brought the drinks that night. He encouraged everyone to let loose, to live a little. So if he's trying to paint me, or Emily, as the bad guy, maybe he should take a look in the mirror." Nathan stared at her, his mind racing. His father hadn't just been a passive observer that night, he had been an active participant. And now, he was trying to rewrite history to protect himself. Armed with the truth, Nathan returned to his parents' house one final time. This time, Linda was home, and Nathan decided it was time for her to know everything. As he laid out the events of the past year, Linda's face went pale. She turned to Robert, her voice trembling. "Is this true? Were you at that sauna?" Robert didn't deny it. "Yes," he admitted, his voice low. "But it wasn't what Nathan's making it out to be." "Stop," Linda said sharply. "You lied to me. You lied to your son. And you tried to ruin his relationship to cover your own mistakes. Do you have any idea how much damage you've done?" Robert looked away, unable to meet her gaze. Nathan felt a surge of relief. Finally, his father's lies had been exposed. In the weeks that followed, Nathan and Emily began to rebuild their lives, free from the shadow of Robert's deception. Though the experience had tested their relationship, it had also brought them closer, strengthening their bond in ways they hadn't anticipated. As they stood together on the balcony of Nathan's apartment one evening, Emily took his hand. "Thank you for believing in me," she said softly. Nathan smiled, pulling her close. "Always," he said. "We've been through hell, but we made it through. And that's what matters." For the first time in months, Nathan felt a sense of peace. The truth had been painful, but it had set them free. And now he and Emily could finally look forward to a future built on trust, love, and a bond that no one could break.